You're listening to the Jōrni Podcast. What does it take to rise from rock bottom and reclaim your life? Discover more in today's episode. This episode contains adult subject matter and strong language. Some listeners may be triggered by this content, and listener discretion is advised. Hi, I'm Petra Brunbauer, and with decades of experience with sadness, pain, anxiety, and stress, I finally figured out how to leave all that behind. And this podcast shows you how to break free permanently so you can reclaim your sanity and find the self-esteem and energy to go after the life you desire. With real talk about mental health, holistic healing, and the tough journey of coming out the other end. This is the Jōrni Podcast. Welcome to today's episode. In this episode, we talk about how toxic shame and life's toughest challenges can hold us back and what it takes to move forward. We explore the bravery needed to face the past and how that process can lead to transformation and a deeper sense of self. Candi Rose is a college dropout with a criminal background who transformed her life to become an author, speaker, coach, real estate investor, and full-time single mom. Her journey from adversity to success inspires others to believe in the possibility of a better future. Candi openly shares her troubled past, including experiences with domestic abuse, substance abuse, and toxic shame, to let others know they're not alone and to encourage hope and resilience. Her powerful memoir, Naked, A True Story, Incarceration, Abuse, Shame, and Redemption, details her raw and courageous path of overcoming immense challenges to embrace the life she was meant to live. Candi's story is not just about survival. It's about breaking free from a double life, shedding the mask of shame, and stepping into healing and purpose. Through her work, she shows others how to confront their past, raise their self-belief, and discover their true potential. Let's meet Candi Rose. Hi, Candi Rose. It's so great to have you on the podcast today. I've been looking forward to getting to chat with you because becoming unstoppable is such an interesting topic for today. And I think that you have a lot of things to share with us today. And I really look forward to hearing your story. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here, Petra.
Yeah, it's my absolute pleasure. I think I connected with you online and your story it really wouldn't let me go. So I'm really glad that you're here to share today. And I know this is a bit of a loaded question to tell us sort of about your story and a little bit of what brought you here today. But do you think you can give us a bit of an insight of what happened, maybe an overview, and kind of what that brought you to do today so that our listeners can get a bit of an idea of who you are and what we'll be talking about today?
Yeah, absolutely. And if you already gave them my bio, they have a understanding of my background. When I was in high school, I got bullied and it was extreme bullying. And instead of running towards everything that was good in my life at that time, like I was going to church, I had a good family, I was doing sports, all that stuff, I went the other way. And that just created a train wreck of an existence for decades. And I started running towards everything. I almost quit school. I quit going to church. I quit sports. I started skipping. I ended up leaving that first school, going to the next school. And I mean, the bullying was so bad that we had to get the police involved because they vandalized my parents' property. They rung up thousands in damages. It was all girls. And they had felony charges. I mean, it was a big scandal. And this had been going on for a couple years. So if anybody's been bullied, which I know there's a lot of us that have, or having kids being bullied, it's just really heartbreaking when you're an innocent child and you don't know why you deserve that. Because at that time, I hadn't been drinking or doing drugs or having sex or anything. So it really affected me. By the time I got to my second school, I was skipping, drinking, doing drugs, got involved with boys By the time I was 19, I was arrested by the DEA. I mean, it went fast downhill. And again, at that point, I'm dating drug dealers. I'm doing all kinds of crazy things. And it just kept spiraling out of control. Eventually, I got involved in abusive relationships. I just didn't see my worth at that time. And I was a hurt teenager running from pain and feeling like unwanted and unloved. And I didn't know what to do. So I ran towards this crowd that accepted me, of course, the alternative crowd. And it was a fake thing, right? It was like an instant gratification because even though I'm doing those things, I'm really not feeling good about myself. But it was all kind of new to me. So it wasn't really that bad at that time. It was like, oh, cool. I'm young. I can go out and I get wasted. I can do all this stuff, wake up, I feel bad about myself, but I bounce back because I'm young. And I just fall into this circle. And eventually I start stripping at 19. I'm in the clubs doing that on and off for 6 years and just dating guys that don't respect me. I don't respect myself. I'm in an abusive relationship with a man that I fall in love with. And my story is one of like just getting beat down, beat down, beat down, beat down. And then finally, somewhere I come up and I'm feeling like I'm going to fight. I'm going to fight for this life. I was with my abusive ex for like 4 years. And I remember when I finally left him, he told me he was going to kill me one night. And I just remember I was in that corner of the room just terrified of him because I knew that if he would have ever let me leave a room, if he didn't want to. And his eyes were baby blue and they turned black. And I just remember thinking, this is so evil right now. What have I done with my life? I've been arrested by the feds. I got arrested 3 times. Feds 19, 20 underage drinking, and arrested by the feds again when I was 23. Because my boyfriend at the time was a fugitive and they had found him at this point. They wanted me to come back. And I was like, oh my God, I thought, I didn't even tell my parents I got arrested. This is how oblivious I was as a child. As I'm in that room with this other boyfriend, I'm like, what am I doing with my life? I'm going to die tonight. I'm going to die. What have I done? And how did I get here? And I just remember begging him not to hurt me. I mean, he would grab me, he'd choke me, throw me up against the wall, throw me on the ground. I just remember that night, I was like, if I could just get out from underneath his arms, I will leave this guy. I will leave him. I just need to get away. And somehow I calmed him down enough to where I finally got close enough and I ran underneath his arm out the door, out the front door. And I ran for miles without shoes on. And I'm surprised he never chased me because he never let me go. And I believe like divine intervention stepped in at this point. I was like, okay, I'm done. I was like, I'm done. I'm going to leave him. And I did. But that month of being away from him, I lost 2 dress sizes. I was a size 8 in US and I went down to a size 2 US. And I'd lost like 25 pounds. And I was so depressed. And I remember thinking, I didn't know it was going to be this hard to leave him. And then I didn't know how bad I was going to feel because I was like, maybe he's right. Maybe nobody is ever going to want me. Maybe all I am is a used up stripper. Like, who's going to want me? All I've done is I've stripped. He told me you're a criminal. You have nothing going for you. I didn't. I dropped out of college. I didn't have anything. I'm like, I have nothing. Who is ever going to want me? Nobody's ever going to want me. And I thought maybe it would just be easier if I just wasn't here anymore. And I thought that would at least stop my pain. And I went to bed that night and I woke up the next day. And this had been going on for a long time. But I mean, when that night came and I was in the really, really darkness of it all, I was like, I don't have anything to show for myself. And the hole is too deep. There's no way I can dig myself out of this hole. And that's what I thought. And I thought, he's right. Everything he's ever told me, maybe I am a dumb bitch. I'm not smart and all the things. And then I just remember waking up that next day and something inside of me was like, no, you're going to get up. You're going to get up and you're going to fight. This is not the end of your story. And I didn't know what that was at that time. Looking back, I know now because that was my faith. That was God. That was Jesus calling me to not take that way out. And I remember thinking, okay, well, there's this other voice inside me right now telling me to like get up and fight. And then there's this other voice inside me that's telling me that I'm worthless, unlovable, and I've done unforgivable things. And I just remember thinking, I can listen to this voice, this good voice that I haven't really heard since I was little. I didn't hear because I ran away from him. I ran away from God. And I said, or I can listen to this other voice that's just been telling me how awful I am and how worthless I am and how I'm never going to amount to anything. And I made a decision at that point. I'm going to listen to this other voice, this good voice. And from that point, I was like, okay, I'm going to get up and I'm going to figure it out. And I was like determined not to go back to the strip club. And I was like, man, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? I can't get a real job, quote unquote, because in the US, you can't get a job if you've had a felony. And I was a conditional felon because of all the trouble that I've gotten into. And I have no college degree. I have no experience. What am I going to do? And I just remember I had gone to this seminar a couple years back about becoming a real estate investor. And that's where you like buy houses and flip them here. And I'm sure you do it there too. But it was like, okay, I pulled out those books and I was like, all right, I'm going to do this. I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to become a real estate investor. And I had worked with an investor like a couple years back, just kind of working along with him, trying to learn it when I'd gone to the seminar, but I was still in the club. And I was like, I think I can do this. And I go and I get my signs. And I don't know about y'all if you have the signs over there, but it was like, we buy houses here in the US, and put my number on it. And that was the beginning of getting it started. I ended up getting it started because I was like, I have no fear at this point. It is legit live or die. And when you don't have any fear and you're just rock bottom, I tell people just get to rock bottom as fast as you can. If you're already going there, just go, because you can come back up like so much stronger. And I'm not saying go there, like don't try to go to rock bottom. I'm just saying if you already are going, you might as well just get there so that you can come back up. But that was the beginning of my real estate investing career. And I never went back to the strip club after that. That was just amazing. And I mean, from there, life went on, but I feel like I've been talking a lot. So.
Thank you for sharing this part of your journey with us so far. And wow, I'm just listening to you share that. And I can feel the pain that you went through and some of those challenges that you faced, and also the determination to change at some point, that just deep desire for things to be different and bringing yourself away from those situations and forging a new path for yourself and finding something you love doing. So thank you for sharing that. And I am so humbled by your strength and your resilience and your absolute wish to make it different and to make it out of that. So, wow, thank you. And I'm glad that you're still here with us to share your story, because you're right. I think there are a lot of listeners that are experiencing bullying or life challenges and addictions in whatever form they may come. And these are the stories where we can listen and say, okay, well, if someone else did it, I think I might be able to do it too, and find that hope for that
Absolutely. I
path.
had a serious problem with substance abuse. I would get blacked out drunk. I OD'd on different drugs. I found myself in situations that were really unsafe. I've been assaulted when I was on drugs. I kind of brush over this a lot when I'm talking to people, but I go real deep into it, into my book, because sometimes you're like, depending on how much time we have, I could talk about this, I could talk about that. But I do want people to know that the main thing of this was that I didn't see a way out. And I didn't know that there could ever be another hope or life for me. And now I am living an amazing life. My story didn't end there, because I had more ups and downs, quite a few. If somebody would have told me at that point, like, you don't understand what your future could be like, is going to be like, I would have been like, no, that's not me. And I just want everybody to know that your story's never over. It's never over. It's never over unless you let it be over, because you can always come back. You can always come back and you can always change your life. It's not easy. It took me a long time to get better with my drinking and to quit drugs. The drinking thing was really hard, but I just kept trying and trying and trying. I would pray to God. I would be throwing up over the toilet, just vomiting, just because I had done so many drugs. My ex was an ecstasy dealer, and he was big time. I didn't know about that because I was really young, but I told you I got in trouble with that. But when I moved down, I started stripping. I was really heavily into cocaine, and I did it all. I did it all except for heroin. I didn't do heroin because one of my friends died when he was 18 and I was 16. And that really scared me. And I have known a lot of friends to die from heroin. They keep dying. We're all getting older. I mean, none of them are good. I'm just saying it just scared me. So I never tried that. But I would be throwing up and I'd just be praying to God, God, please give me the desire to not want to do drugs. I didn't know. I was like, why do I keep doing this? And I would sometimes fall asleep on the bathroom floor thinking I might just not wake up because I couldn't go to the hospital. I couldn't call my parents. I mean, at that point, you're bugging out so bad. You're like, I don't want anybody to see me like this. Maybe I can just sleep it off. I hope I wake up. I hope I wake up. That took a long time to get over. But if you have the addictions and you have problems, sex, that was another thing. I felt so bad about myself, even after I was born again, even after I decided, okay, I'm going to get my life together. This is where it really starts coming into play because I was struggling with shame, toxic shame, as I call it. That's my topic. Feeling so horrible about yourself that you're like, I'm worthless. I am unlovable. Things I've done are unforgivable. I don't deserve a good man. I don't deserve this life. Like that's shame. That's low self-esteem, low self-confidence, call it whatever you want, low self-worth, but it's that word is so yucky. Like shame, like, oh, you have shame. People don't even say they have shame. I just went off on a tangent. I was like, wait, I had a point to that. The shame actually started building up even when I was getting my life together. Now I'm a real estate investor and now I'm going to church and I'm volunteering. And from the outside looking in, everybody's like, oh, wow, she's really getting it together. But behind closed doors, I was a mess because now I have this image that I've got it all together, but I haven't gotten help for all the things I went through. Like I started having a career that I respected myself for. I started going to church and that helped so much. My faith, whatever faith people are, higher power, that helped me because I couldn't help myself. I had tried. So I had to get a higher power to help me. I started going back to the gym and I always talk to people, baby steps, take baby steps. I was so weak after leaving my abuser. So I would just start walking little by little, just outside like a block, just getting it together. But the shame was eating me inside. It was eating me up because now I'm doing all this stuff and people are looking at me like amazed and giving me all this. You're doing so great. You're doing so great. I mean, behind closed doors, I would still go out, just get wasted. That was when I was struggling behind closed doors because I didn't want people to know, oh, she's going and she's doing all this amazing stuff. Because I wanted to like get out of the reality. I was feeling like I have this mask on. I can't let them see my faults. Because if they see my faults, like I worked so hard to get away from that girl. And now I'm this woman, but I wasn't healed. I wasn't healed in order to feel anything. Because now I'm like, I just need to feel something. Now I'm still drinking or drugs or sex because I'm like, okay, well, maybe I can just go feel something with somebody. It was so weird. It was just so weird. And I struggled with this for a really long time, which actually is why I ended up writing my book, Naked. A lot of things happened throughout my life. And I, again, could sit here and tell you even so many more stories. I ended up becoming a full-time single mom. Oh my gosh, the guy left and we haven't seen him since she was 1 and she's 14. I'm like, why, God, do you keep allowing these things? We were almost homeless. He kicked us out. He took our only car, even though he had three. He kicked us out of our second house. We were engaged. I called the wedding off. He took everything. He kept all my clothes. We had to go. We would have been homeless if my parents wouldn't have let us come and live with them, which of course they did. Thank God. Not everybody has parents to go to with a baby or children. Again, I'm like, God, why? I hit rock bottom again. I had nothing. I mean, nothing. I had nothing at that time. And that was after I had already built this, like left my abuser, got my business started, all this stuff. And now I'm hitting rock bottom again. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what do you want from me? And I thought, maybe this is it. Maybe this is the end of my road. Like maybe I'm just meant to live in poverty. I don't know. I can't take care of my child. I never got any money from him. We never saw him again. After a couple of months of sleeping and being depressed, like we all get after something crazy happens, I got up and I started to fight again. And I was like, okay, I'm going to build my business back for a second time. And my parents are like, no, you just need to go get a real job, like benefits, where you can get a paycheck every week. And I was like, that is not happening. That does not sound fun to me. That is not my desire for a nice, fun life. I don't want to work for somebody else. Like I want to become a real estate investor. I don't want to live in poverty because I'm working at some coffee shop. That's not what I want for my life. I want to have an amazing life for me and my child. And I don't want her to ever have to ask for anything. And they were like, you're out of your mind. How are you going to do this? You've got nothing. And I was like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. And I did it. It took me 9 months, but I did it. I got my business started back for a second time. And I think the point is that I ended up finally breaking and writing this book. And it's called Naked because it exposes all the stuff that I never wanted anybody to know about me. And I had been speaking, I had been writing, just kind of like journaling. And I was like, okay, this is the final straw of overcoming my toxic shame. I'm going to write a book and I'm going to write all the dirty, dirty, dirty details of my life, of which I don't want my parents reading. I don't want my child to read it. She can't read it until she's 18. It's not for kids, by the way. There's a trigger warning. There's a lot in there. It goes into details about a lot of it. And I was like, I have to write this book because I feel like God called me to write this book because I know that I'm not the only one that's dealing with this. I wanted to break that toxic shame over my life that had been over my life for decades, telling me I was just no good, worthless. I had to expose it in order to get over it. I had to expose this shame because shame holds its power over you in darkness and it isolates you and it silences you. The shame always comes from somebody. So whether it's from your childhood or your abusive relationship or whatever, I had a lot of shame from all different people in my life. And this was the final breaking point. I was like, I'm writing a book and I am going to be healed of my toxic shame. And it's just been a long journey. And it's been a long journey of healing and understanding how to heal and how you can heal faster and all this stuff for me. And I thought I have to share this with people. And because when I would go and speak on stage or speak on a video, I have people come to me and they say, this one girl said, I was raped by my stepfather. And I hope that I have the courage to share my story with people like you shared your story. And she said, and I just want to say thank you. Thank you for being so courageous and vulnerable because you don't know how much you helped me. And I just like, when I heard that, that was one of the first feedback comments years and years ago when I started speaking. And I was like, that's it. That's what I've been called to do because we need to let people know that we're all suffering and we're suffering with different things. And we all think we're suffering alone and we're not. We all have so much more in common than we know because we suffer with a lot of the things that shame is. You're not even going to know your neighbor or your sister, whoever has that shame because they don't want to tell you because they don't want to be rejected or judged or whatever it is. And that's the thing is that shame is something that we have to bring to the forefront so that people can understand it's okay to talk about it. You've got to talk about it in a safe place so that you can start to heal. That's why I wrote my book.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. And I get the feeling from what you are saying that shame is a big component that keeps us stuck in the places that we're in, because it feels like we can't share our story. We can't connect with others who might also be able to support us on a different path. And how did that shame impact your journey with, for example, your parents or other relationships that you were having? I can imagine that this was a very difficult piece to heal if you are later on moving in with your parents again when you were becoming a single mom. And how did shame impact those relationships? And how did you find healing in those ways to kind of process that shame and get healing through that?
Yeah. So shame is something that keeps you silent and isolated. And most people aren't going to talk about it, which keeps you from becoming your true, authentic self, because you are now this person that puts this mask on, a metaphorical mask, and you go out and you pretend like everything is okay, but you don't talk about it. So a lot of the times nobody knows you're struggling with, your family doesn't know. I mean, I'm sure there's people on here that tell their family everything, but I can tell you right now, my parents did not know I was stripping. They didn't know I had a drug problem. They didn't know any of that until after the fact. I finally told them when I got arrested by the feds the second time, by the way, there's something you should know. And they didn't know to the extent of it because I didn't want them to know. I didn't want them to know. I felt horrible about myself. The answer is I felt horrible. I still have this shame that, oh my gosh, my parents are going to read my book because I have a stepfather and a father. I'm like, who knows? Are they going to disown me? But I didn't write it for them. I wrote it for me to free myself. And I wrote it for other people that are suffering like me to free them. Shame is something that you have to work through. It's not an easy thing to work through. And you have to be careful about who you're talking to about your shame, because you want to make sure that you're talking to somebody that they're safe. They're not going to judge you. They're not going to make you feel bad, because even though our family loves us, they're not going to understand unless they've been through something similar. So that's what I always tell people. If you're going to get help, which you should, because when you break your silence and you're like, I'm just going to say what I've gone through, I'm just going to get it out there. And then you start realizing, oh my gosh, I'm not alone. It's okay. I'm not a bad person. And you start to grow, you become the person that you were created to be, because now you're not hiding anymore. And it's a beautiful thing. And it's not an overnight thing, but it is such a beautiful thing to be happy and be yourself and be comfortable in your own skin and be confident and not care what people think. I used to care what people think, and now I don't. I want them to like me, but I don't care if they don't like me.
Yeah, it sounds very empowering to choose that path. I'm curious, Candi, what keeps you getting up every day and fighting, and what keeps you motivated now to continue on this path? Is that an internal thing for you, or are there things that you do every day, practices or something? Or what keeps you motivated to stay out of that life that you came from and down that path that you're on now?
Well, my daughter, of course, she changed my life. And I love that little girl so much. I'm not a kid person. I never was a kid person. And God gave me a kid and it changed my life. I also live from my faith now. And I'm not perfect. Okay. I want everybody to know I am not perfect. Thank God I'm not who I used to be. Right. And usually, like anybody else, I would say a certain percent of the time, a majority of the time, things are just great. But I have setbacks. Okay. It's just they're fewer and further in between. And I just have to think, okay, I'm not a horrible person. I had a setback. This isn't the life that I want to live. These aren't the people that I want to hang out with. This isn't the kind of guy I want to date. Like if it happens, I know how to correct myself now. I know how to not to go into the shame spiral anymore. I also have a community that I feel like this is my calling and I want to help people. So that, I wake up super excited. I'm writing my second book. going to be great. But the first book is launching right now. So that's the first book, Naked. But I'm also halfway through the second book. I've also created these programs where I help women from abusive and traumatic backgrounds to also heal from their past. I always say I help free women from their past, and I show them how to confidently, courageously share their story like me. If they have something inside them, it's like, I want to share my story too, because it creates rapid healing when you share your story. Now I help women to not only break their isolation and silence, but to become confident in sharing their story. And I show them how to build their own community so they can continue their healing and stuff. And that is just amazing. That wakes me up and it just makes me like want to get to work. It's just having something outside of yourself that you can focus on besides you is just amazing. It's like that impact of giving back. And I've done so many speeches for free at different rehabilitation centers, churches, and stuff like that. I also am a paid speaker, but I always try to give back whenever I can. And I also do like certain things where I do like free trainings and stuff, which I'm going to give you all the links for that. Anybody listening that wants to come in and kind of get a feel for like what I'm doing. I'm always trying to do like free trainings. And of course, I have people that want to actually work with me trainings, but I always try to make sure I'm giving back the majority of the women, because that's the people that really need help. And then the ones that have survived and now they're looking to change their life. We're in like two modes. There's survival mode, and easily triggered is the same mode. When you're just trying your best just to survive, you've been in an abusive relationship, some sort of traumatic relationship. Maybe you're a single mom now. You found yourself like, oh my gosh, what happened? How did this even happen? I don't know what I'm going to do, right? That's survival mode. But the women that have worked, and I offer a community for those people as well that want to kind of like help just getting through the survival mode. The coaching is where they've gotten through their survival mode and now they're looking like it's from survive to thrive, turn their pain into their passion, use their story as their strength. That's just a different mode. So there's just a couple different communities that I have set up depending on where they're at. And I think that that's just what it's all about. It's just giving back and helping other women to come up and realize that you're going to be okay. It's going to take a little work. It's going to be uncomfortable. Okay. You're going to have setbacks, but you're not alone and you're not the only person going through this. And you don't have to feel bad about where you've been in your life, because you have a story to tell and your story is going to impact so many other people. That's what keeps me going. And I love the gym too. So that gives me the energy.
That sounds great. And you also have a podcast. You want to tell us a little bit about that as well?
Yes. So that is Exposed with Candi Rose. And it's Candy with an I, Candi, Rose, like the flower. And I created this podcast that is a play off of my book, Naked. So it's all about exposing things that you don't want people to know about and talking about I call them juicy stories, because it's like they are. When you're talking about a story, there's certain people that'll say, oh, yeah, well, I had a drinking and drug problem. And you're like, oh, wow, I didn't know that. And then I get up there and I'm like, I had a drinking and drug problem. And let me tell you, one time I was in a cab going from my friend's house down to downtown Atlanta to go to a rave. And I woke up the next morning in the ghetto without my purse, without anything. And at this time, we didn't even have phones. So basically, I had OD'd on GHB, which is a drug that we took back then, which is a date rape drug. I don't recommend it, but I was really, really stupid. And I took it because everybody would say, oh, you just take a little bit and then it's okay. Well, I totally blacked out. I woke up down in a really bad part of town in Atlanta, Georgia. I found a barbershop that was open, and I ended up calling my friends and saying, hey, I don't know where I'm at. I'm down here. And so I talk about the crazy, crazy behind the scene, like the really nitty gritty details of like, I had a problem. I think it's just people relate to that more. When I go on to the podcast, those are the kind of things I like to talk about. Some stories you're like, oh, that was a crazy story. Maybe you can laugh about it. But like I know, there's a lot of stories that happen that you're like, it was terrifying and horrible at that moment. And my main thing is just helping people to understand, like, doing drugs and drinking because you're trying to avoid something in your life. As long as you keep doing drugs and drinking or having sex or gambling or doing whatever you're doing, you're not going to heal. You have to feel it to heal it. You have to get really, really true to yourself. And you have to be like, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to heal. I don't want to drink. I don't want to do drugs. I don't want to go out and be promiscuous. Like, what can I do? How can I fix this? And I always say there's books, there's self-help books, there's spiritual books, faith books. Those help me out a lot. Back in the day, we didn't have all this ebook and audiobook and all this stuff. There's so much at your fingertips. I wasn't on social media back then. You have social media now. You have communities. You have podcasts. We didn't have all this stuff. Just surround yourself with people that are positive and uplifting and who have been where you've been and they've gotten to someplace that you want to get to. And then find yourself a role model.
That's some really good advice. And I think a very good first step, if there's any listeners listening in that are maybe stuck in their own challenges or they don't quite know how to move forward, those are some great tips for them to get started on that journey. Find some education around the topic, find some self-help books, find some support, or maybe find a mentor or someone who can help guide you on that path if they've been there already. Did you do this journey all on your own, or did you have someone that supported you, or an organization or an association or any kind of community that supported you through this, or did you decide to just do this yourself?
I did a lot of it myself. I really relied heavily on my faith. Every single time I hit rock bottom, I always just said, okay, I need help. And that really helped me to grow in my faith. And I go to church, but I always say find a place of whatever religion you are, because there's a lot of people that are in those places that are so willing to help you, or they have small groups or whatever. That was my thing, was trying to get into my faith and reading. I did read a lot of self-help books, a lot. And over the years, I just kind of learned how to do things differently. When I was younger, my parents would try to take me to psychologists and therapists, and I didn't like them because I didn't relate to them. It was like, well, they're going to just sit here and look at me and tell them all about myself. And I'm like, who are you? Have you even been through anything I've been through? I love a good licensed therapist and psychologist if they're good. But when I have gone, I have found that I feel judged and I don't relate to them because they don't open up and tell me anything about themselves. And I think that's where the real healing is. You've got to relate and trust and know somebody in order to open up. Over the years, I didn't go back to psychologists and therapists, but I did do coaching eventually. And that was many years later down the line because I just didn't have the money at first. And I was really big into community back then. They can find communities online or at their local communities. That's definitely a start. And they're always welcome in my community too.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I do believe that the support system in the community is a huge piece of whether we, I think, continue and succeed in the goals that we set for ourselves. I do think it's so much harder to do it by yourself than with a group or some sort of support that helps you through the tough patches when you keep falling down, and they help you get back up. So that's amazing that you're creating these spaces for people to join as well. And I will just repeat here that you can listen in to Candi's podcast called Exposed with Candi Rose. So you can find more resources there. And you can listen in from your favorite podcast provider. I'm sure that you're on all the networks. And we will, of course, be linking to all of Candi's offerings in the show notes as well. So be sure to check there on how you can connect with her, how you can connect with her communities. And if you feel that you are in need of a community that you'd like to join, or you're looking for support, or you'd like to share your story and find that connection and authenticity, then reach out, have a conversation, share with someone, find a mentor, or connect with Candi and join one of her communities. And you've shared your journey with us here. I feel like you've opened up to us and you've been so raw and vulnerable and shared this with us. And I do feel like there's a great connection there for anyone who is struggling with the same or similar things and is looking for that connection as well. So thank you for all of
Absolutely.
that.
Thank you. This was so much fun. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you for being here today and for sharing your story with us. And like I said, I am so humbled by everything that you have been through, and to be sitting here and sharing that with us, and being a real estate investor now and a speaker and all the books that you're writing. It's absolutely wonderful. So anyone listening to this, if you are in situations that are dark and deep and you don't know if you can keep going or if you want to keep going, then listen to this episode, and hopefully Candi has shared some insights with you that will give you the hope and resilience to continue on and find that life that you want to live and change what you want to change. It is possible. You've shown us that today. So thank you so much for that. And thanks for spending your morning or afternoon with us. I've really, really enjoyed our conversation, and take really good care of yourself, Candi.
Thank you. You too, Petra.
Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to listen in. If you enjoy the Jōrni Podcast, please support us by subscribing, sharing on social media, and leaving us a review. We appreciate you. And you can find more of The Jōrni on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and our website, thejorni.com. Sending you love and courage, and see you next time.